Hey ladies and gentlemen, Wolfcryer here, and I'm back at it with another patch 2.6.1 breakdown. This video is going to be all about the Necromancer and the changes that are coming in this patch. The Necromancer got a bunch of changes in patch 2.6.1, more than any other class. Now, some of it is rebalancing, but these are all buffs, just like every other class. First and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, Fueled by Death is now fixed and working properly. The movement speed bonus from this passive can now exceed 25%, which is awesome. Definitely helpful with those speed builds with the Necromancer. So finally, after way too long, this passive is now fixed. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and dive into the skills. First up, we've got Command Skeletons. Commanding your skeletal warriors will break crowd control effects on them. And skeletal warriors will no longer die after taking too many hits. This means that now that Bone Ringer can really stack up. No more, what was it, 23, 24 hits and they automatically died regardless of how much damage they take. So now these guys can stick around in a fight long enough to get a ton of stacks from Bone Ringer and really do some damage against the Rift Guardian with that Rift Guardian killer. So that looks pretty cool indeed. Adds another variant to the Rift Guardian killing Necromancer. Then we have Maltorious Petrified Spike. Bone Spear now costs 40 essence and deals 550% to 700% increased damage, up from 375 to 450, so a massive damage buff on this item, which is definitely useful for those Pestilence Bone Spear builds. So hopefully we see a resurgence of that set, since it was pretty useless in Season 11. Then we have Devour Voracious. Resource cost reduction stacks granted from this rune will now stack and are no longer overridden from multiple casts. So this is just pretty much a fix, which is pretty cool. And now Simulacrum will add a glow effect to the skill icon to indicate when it is active, so that you have better knowledge and awareness of when you are in your Simulacrum damage boost. And for skeletal mages, this skill will now display the duration of the oldest mage as a skill buff in addition to the total of number of mages active. Very useful, so you do not have to just keep spamming mages wondering how long your oldest one is out or when it's going to expire. Now you will have an actual number to base that on, so that you are not wasting essence and that sort of thing, and wasting time that you could be DPSing with these mages by casting a new mage. And then we have Bone Armor. The essence cost is removed, and now it can be cast while you are moving, which is very, very useful. For Army of Dead, Frozen Army, the pulsing damage from this rune has been spread out, pretty much just to give a overall similar damage dealt to all the enemies in your Army of Dead. Now let's take a look at the item changes for the Necromancer. Bloodsong Mail. While in the land of the dead, Command Skeletons deals 100 to 125% increased damage and gains the effects of Enforcer, Frenzy, Dark Mending, and Freezing Grasp runes. So this is just a slight change to the Bloodsong Mail. Used to be that it gains all the runes, which is pretty helpful because one of those runes would actually make them explode. So having that on there definitely negated your Command Skeleton's abilities, because they would just explode on target and have to be resummoned by the Necromancer. Up next is that Blood-Tide Blade. Death Nova deals 80 to 100% increased damage for every enemy within 25 yards. Another damage buff, and it increases the area as well. So Death Nova should definitely get a nice little boost from this weapon now. And one of my favorite changes of all, Dainty's Binding. You gain 40 to 50% damage reduction when there is at least one enemy affected by any of your curses. No longer do you need to keep Decrepify on your bar while you are wearing these. You can gain that damage reduction from any of your curses, including Leech and Frailty. Then we have Defiler Cusis. However the hell you pronounce that. Your Bone Spirit's damage is increased by 400 to 500% for every second it is active. And that is a massive boost. Still don't know if Bone Spirit's going to be useful at all, but that is about 5 times the previous damage bonus on this item. Up next is Fate's Vow. Army of the Dead now deals an additional 200 to 250% damage and gains the effect of the Unconventional Warfare rune. So this means that this now gives a flat-out damage boost to your Army of Dead as well. So maybe we could figure out a build with this. I'm thinking possible. We'll have to do some testing and see how that goes. And another item that changes is Golem Skin Breaches. You take 30% less damage while your golem is alive. And the cooldown on Command Golem is reduced by 20 to 25 seconds. So very useful if you're pretty much just using the golem for its active ability. So this will reduce the cooldown and you can use it in addition to the passive. So this should bring its cooldown to a normal level that can be maintained while you are using it. And then one of the bigger ones, Ledger Disdain. Grim Scythe deals an additional 65 to 80% damage for each point of essence it restores, up from 7 to 10%. And this is the main item that is being used currently in that new Necromancer build, in which you are using your poison skills and Grim Scythe and Simplicity Strength, and it's pretty much just a generator build, and it's pretty cool, pretty badass. So far it's cleared at least 100. This definitely puts it on par with other builds. That's what I like the most out of this patch. Not that it's creating these amazing single builds for each class. Instead, it's creating a more robust, choice-filled game in which you can run different builds and get roughly the same results. Yes, there's still going to be top builds for each class, but this patch definitely seems to be narrowing that gap, which is the best part of it. I love it because it is making more builds viable and making the game fun, because you're not locked into playing a build you can't stand just because it's the best, when you can pick another one and you know what, you're still going to make the leaderboards. You're not going to make it as high as some of the other builds, but you can still make the boards. You can still do 90 plus. You can still do 95 plus on most of these builds that are coming out of this, which is pretty awesome. So it's good to see multiple builds for the Necromancer and every other class come into play in this patch. This brings back the Inarius set for a pushing build. Other than just the Rift Guardian Command Skeletons build, now you've got Inarius back into a pushing build, which is pretty beast. Not to mention there is now also a Pestilence Corpse Lance build that is pushing the leaderboards in group play. So like I said, a lot of cool builds coming out of this patch for every single class. A lot of builds being reintroduced that were there, and now they've become viable and they can hold their own against previous awesome builds as well. Alright, so moving on along. We've got Lost Time. Your cold skills reduce the movement speed of enemies by 30%. In addition, your movement speed is increased by 8 to 10% for 5 seconds, maximum 5 stacks. So yet another huge movement speed buff for the Necromancer for those speed farming builds. Necromancer is going to be one of the fastest moving classes this game has. Between that Fueled by Death passive and the new changes to Lost Time, it's going to be pretty quick speed farming on the Necromancer. Then we've got Mask of Scarlet Death. The main part of this is this item will now attempt to give preference to the strongest monster to become the Mega Revive when selecting a group of corpses. So it's not going to randomly try to pick the lowest monster there is, like one of the bees or something like that. Instead, when you revive this, which is pretty much you cast it and it turns all of your revive minions into one really big, powerful minion, and it's going to try to pick the strongest. So it's going to pick one with hopefully more health, etc. And this way it'll last longer, be on your screen more, and ultimately deal more damage. Definitely helpful for that big thorn build that's out there. So hopefully this adds some life to that as well. That's going to give the Necromancer a bunch of pushing builds. Alright, so up next is Nair's Black Death. Each different poison skill you use increases the damage of your poison skills by 75 to 100%. Previously this was 50 to 65, and this is also something that is being used in that Melee Mancer setup with the Ledger's Disdain and all your poison skills, and you're pretty much dealing tons of damage while being a generator build. And then we've got Scythe of the Cycle. Your secondary skills now deal 350 to 400% additional damage while Bone Armor is active. This is definitely going to be a buff to that Rathma's Singularity Mage build, which is pretty beast too, because that means it can move up even further in its GR capability, which is cool. That might put it closer to that Trag'Oul's Corpse Lance build and some of the other builds that are coming out of this. So that's pretty cool indeed, because that is one of my favorite builds with the Necromancer. And this can also come in handy with the new Pestilence builds that are coming out, because Bone Spear is a secondary skill. And next we have Stewart's Greaves. You gain 75 to 100% increased movement speed for 10 seconds after using Blood Rush. Yet another movement speed buff for the Necromancer. I wonder how fast you could actually get the Necro moving if you were using all of these items. That would be pretty fun to test out just by itself, to see exactly what you could do with this as far as speed goes on that Necro. And then we have the Johnstone. So it used to be that you would gain stacks of Macabre while you were in Land of the Dead, and these would be usable while you were outside of Land of the Dead. Now instead, at the end of Land of the Dead, you gain 50 stacks of Macabre Knowledge, which increases your damage of Corpse Lance and Corpse Explosion by 150 to 200%, and no longer has that while outside of Land of the Dead. So you can use this when Land of the Dead comes up. You can save your stacks and use it when that is now up. And you pop your Land of the Dead, Simulacrum, boom, you get these increased damage Corpse Lances or Corpse Explosions and just obliterate Rift Guardians. And then there are also two set changes for the Necromancer. First up, Pestilence Master Shroud. The 6-piece set bonus for the Pestilence set: each corpse you consume grants you an empowered Bone Spear charge that increases the damage of your next Bone Spear by 3,000%, but it also increases the damage of both Corpse Lance and Corpse Explosion by 1,500%. So definitely helpful, and that is how that new Pestilence Corpse Lance build is coming into play. And then we have Trag'Oul's Avatar. The 6-piece set bonus has been changed slightly. Skills no longer cost double the health. You get all the same bonuses as the set initially had, but it doesn't come with that extra health cost anymore, which is pretty sweet indeed. And there you have my breakdown for the Necromancer, guys. Patch 2.6.1 definitely has me excited because, like I said, tons of builds are becoming viable, and that is what matters the most to me. The fact that this game can reintroduce builds or introduce brand new builds that all of a sudden are able to do GR90s in the right hand, 95s in the right hands, and even GR100s in the right hands. I mean, it just opens up your play style. Something you might like to play now can actually stand a chance against other builds. Like, for instance, I personally can't stand playing the Trag'Oul's Corpse Lance build. I find it boring and just unplayable for me personally. In groups, that's different. I actually like it in group play, but solo play, I do not like it whatsoever. I'd rather push with my Rathma's Singularity Mage build or something else. And now I've got multiple builds to try, plus my Rathma's build will deal more damage now. Pretty cool. Win-win type of situation. Trag'Oul's Corpse Lance is still a very, very viable build. Probably still top build. We'll have to wait and see on that, but this didn't negate that. It just opened the door to new builds. So I gotta say thank you very much for Blizzard for this patch. If most of the stuff in this patch goes live, I will be a very, very happy person. Alright guys, I do have to say thank you so very much for taking the time out of your day to watch my video. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. And you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you comment below on your thoughts on the Necromancer's patch notes for 2.6.1. Thank you guys once again so very much, and you guys have a great day. Peace.